Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Diane Allen, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action.
How to make an impact and transform your life. Hey, everybody. I have a great guest for you today. His name is Joe Green, and he comes to us from California, and I am in North Carolina. So we're on opposite sides of the United States, and we have some very similar views of the world and some fun things to talk about today. Joe's had a really interesting life, from the armed forces to the health and nutrition space. He has 4 kids, and he is a go-getter type person. So he would be like an extrovert, where I'm like an introvert who looks extroverted. So this is going to be a fun conversation. So grab your drink and sit back and get ready to drink in some wisdom from my new friend, Joe Green. Welcome, Joe, to the show.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to have you here. And I have a few basic questions for you, and then we're just going to get into the nitty gritty of things. But first of all, what inspired you to go into the Air Force?
Long story short, my goal in life was never to join the military, just because I came from a family with a military background, and I was really looking to do something different. But, life kind of took me in a different direction, fell on hard times. And the next thing you know, I found myself in a recruiter office, just looking for somehow to get paid and have a place to live. So I was literally going from house to house, living with whoever would take me in. I found myself living in Mexico, of all places, for a little while, and that didn't work out. And I came quickly back to the U.S. and was in the Air Force recruiter station, and the rest was history.
Wow. So how long were you in the Air Force?
15 years active duty, and I did 3 years in the reserve.
Wow. So you never really planned on doing the Air Force, and you were there 15 years.
Yes.
So there's something that must have resonated with you at that level of service and commitment and discipline and all the things that go with serving in general and also in the Air Force. So out of that 15 years, how would you summarize the greatest impact it's had on your life today?
I think that just being in the military, serving and living around the world, it's really changed my perspective on who we are as people. I've always lived in my own small town, and I just really couldn't think outside the borders of the United States, outside of just going on vacations. But actually, living with other cultures, it really shaped, just like my outlook on life. So that was probably the biggest impact, and of course, we have deployments and we're helping people, and just how grateful for people are, and the way they look at us. I was just completely unaware until I got to experience it firsthand.
Oh, that sounds so powerful on both sides of the coin. We don't realize that. I think we're so protected in this country unless we've traveled outside of it, and then you're there in a service capacity. So then the way they see you, and there's all those dynamics that I think just the average person never really gets to experience. That's why I wanted to ask you about that. I'm like, I think it's more profound than people give it credit for.
Absolutely.
So you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And as I've read about you, it says serial entrepreneur. So that means we've done more than one thing over time. And one of the things I know about entrepreneurs is that we tend to be fast thinking, creative, and often outside of the boxes. So is there any time in your life, in your entrepreneur world, where you've run into situations where people just couldn't see your vision, or they couldn't get you, or you walked around going, how come nobody gets it?
Absolutely. Especially when I started my entrepreneurship, while I was in the military, I had a lot of people who just didn't understand. They didn't understand my ambition. A lot of people told me, hey, you're wasting your time. Wait till you retire. Wait till you get out. Do whatever you want. So a lot of people want me to pump my brakes and just kind of slow down. Friends and family. And it's not because they were wishing ill will on me. I think it's just because they were trying to protect me. They were just like, hey, Joe, you're dreaming big, but that's risky. That's scary. Don't do it. So it's very hard to find like-minded people who actually encourage you versus telling you like, hey, slow down, do this another time in your life.
Yeah, I always tell my clients, if you have a really great mission and great idea, tell your family last. And then when you're already successful is when you tell them, and then they can say they supported you the whole way, and everybody will be happy.
Exactly. That's the best advice ever when it comes to family.
Because you're right. It's not because they mean harm. It's they're trying to protect you. But that fear, their fear, when they push it on somebody else in the form of protection, is not always the best place to be. It's not always serving the situation. So I always say, tell the family last. I always tell my family last. And then how come I'm the last to know? I'm like, well. Oh, well, that's how it rolls. Okay. So what was your first entrepreneur thing you started getting into?
So originally, I just started off, just like helping people with nutrition. I was designing meal plans for people, and that like really was more of me being nice. I wasn't looking at it as being a business. But if I even did sell, meal plans, it was really just little next to nothing. Even though I would put hours and hours of like research and planning, for one specific person, I was just doing it to be helpful. But when I started getting people offering to pay me for my services, that's when I started thinking like, people actually value this. This is interesting, So it turned into me becoming a personal trainer. And then I realized quickly being a personal trainer, you're actually a life coach, because most of my time was helping people with their day-to-day stressors more so than counting reps on their machines. So like everything, like it started evolving the more I went, but it started off just making meal plans for people off of food that I would normally eat. It just became a huge business.
Oh, that's amazing. And so it organically grew into this really great business because you started out with the servant leader mentality. I'm just going to serve people and say yes and help the best way I can. And then it just started growing from that humble beginning, if you will.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And when you said that about being a coach as a trainer, I'm like laughing because my trainers have probably I think they've saved me from many meltdowns over the years, and they've saved other people probably from me. I remember one time specifically too with my friend trainer James at the time, and he's like, I don't even remember I was running large rehab centers and stuff, and I don't remember what I was stressed out about, but I remember looking at him and I was crying about something. I don't even know what it was, but I'm doing the reps and while I'm doing all this, right? And then he goes, I said, how does it feel to be between me and like danger out there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he laughed. We just thought it was funny. He's a Marine guy. So it was just,
oh my goodness.
It was fun. And it's nice to have somebody who's got your back who knows how to, I guess.
That's awesome.
I know, it's fun. So you grew this nutrition into a big business, starting with humble beginnings. And so, but you were in the military, which isn't entrepreneur-like. So did you teach yourself how to be an entrepreneur type person, or did you get coaches or mentors, or how did you start your own growth process in this whole different world?
In the beginning, for the first 10 years, I was just learning as I was going, trial and error. I really didn't know anything about anything. And I would say, it wasn't until I actually hired a business coach, that's when life started changing drastically. And I give all the credit to my wife. At the time we were dating, she just really, really believed in me. And we were at just a seminar. It was brand new for us. And she told me, she said, I want you to get online. I want you to hire the coach. Of course, the price tag was way heftier than I would have ever dreamed on spending any one person just to give me some guidance. But we spent like $20,000 for just 1 year of coaching with the coach. It was worth it every penny. At the time, I didn't know it. At the time, I was like, okay, she's crazy. I hope this does not go through. but it went through. And he took me light years ahead of what I did in the 10 years before I met him. And it was just understanding the business fundamentals, being more emotionally equipped to handle the challenges that came at me, when it comes to being a business owner, so like, he coached me in a sense of, keeping me focused, and he coached me in a sense of being organized and structured with my business. So having a coach was the biggest life-changing thing for me.
Yeah, I agree with that too. It's been my business coaches that have taken things to a whole new level.
Oh yeah.
And I think the discipline is so important, and realizing that being an entrepreneur is a very up and down situation.
Yes.
So what's one of the biggest challenges you've had to deal with as an entrepreneur?
It was my transition from the military to the civilian lifestyle, especially because the tail end of my career, I worked as a military training leader and a military training instructor. So the guys with those round hats yelling at everybody, and the mentality in the military, although it's not what my parents went through, but we still had a sense of discipline. And basically, if I outranked you, you just do as I say. There's no really questioning me. Working with civilians was a big challenge because I couldn't find that easy medium to where I wasn't too hard or too soft. And I was very uncomfortable leading in that sense because I was so worried about like discouraging people. So we grew a pretty big staff for our first, actual like brick and mortar business that we had. But there was a lot of areas where I feel I failed just because I wasn't comfortable leading in that different capacity. So that amongst all things I can really recall, that was one of the biggest ones. Me and my wife had many talks, and it was really just making sure, like, are we taking care of our team? Are we great leaders? Are we doing well? Like those things it was very, very challenging.
Right. Is your wife involved with the business as well?
She's in my back. She's in my corner for sure. She has her own career. She's recently retired from the military, but she still continues to work as a medical provider. So that's her number one. Number two is just making sure that I'm sane and she makes sure the organization is there. But for the most part, she lets me do my thing. And I think I'm most creative and I get more things done when I have room to think and do things. So we respect each other's boundaries.
Right. That spaciousness really matters to create,
absolutely,
bring things together. So you are obviously, by how you're speaking, a fast thinking person. I think entrepreneurs are naturally gifted in a lot of ways, and we naturally have fast thinking capability. Most of them that I know.
Yes.
So along with your intelligence and all of these things, do you use your intuition in your work? Like, how do you use your gut in all of this? Or do you not pay attention to it? Or how does that work?
I do with people. Absolutely. Whether it's a client or an employee, sometimes someone can come with the most amazing resume and experience. But if I feel like a certain energy between myself and somebody else, I could just feel that there's just good chemistry. A lot of times that outweighs everything else for me. That's usually in clients. If I feel like, I don't think this is the right person I need to bring on board to work with as a coach, because if you can bring on people who can actually bring you down, and there's not enough money in the world that's going to really make up for that. So a lot of times I do go off to intuition, and sometimes I do steer people away, hey, this might not be a good fit, or whatever the case may be in the conversation. And I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but that's situations where I do use my intuition before I hire somebody. There's an old saying, hire slow, fire fast. And I take the first part very seriously. I really take my time to feel that person out and see if I feel good about them, not just on paper, but as a person.
Right. I think that's really smart. Forbes magazine was quoted as saying that intuition's the highest form of intelligence. And I think when we give ourselves permission to pay attention to that vibe and honor it in whatever way, that we're accessing intelligence that's nonverbal, that's beyond just our regular cognitive, like what's on the resume or what does this look like? Well, how does it feel? How does it land on me? I think is even a higher form of intelligence. And so I had a feeling you used your intuition.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's great. So you help people become successful in the fitness space and in the coaching space. And so what I'd love to know is, because I get this question a lot asked for me to ask my guests, how do you help somebody through fear of success? So
sometimes it's good to know where that fear is coming from. A lot of times it might be attached to something they experienced in the past. It can be something completely unrelated. And just taking weight loss, I encounter a lot of people who just don't feel like they're going to be successful. Like they're just unlucky. They just can't do it because they failed in other areas of their life. Nowadays, I'm dealing with people who feel they're going to fail in business. They just don't believe in themselves. So I like to find out, where's this fear coming from? Let's dissect this, and what's the meaning of this in your life? And then we try to build on that from there, and it's not really cookie cutter. A lot of times, someone, it stems from a past relationship, but they tie that on to everything that goes on in their life. And I think that's where my life coaching hat came into play when I was a personal trainer. It was finding out like, why don't you think you can push another rep? Or why don't you think you can go a little heavier? And they're just afraid. They're afraid of pushing themselves because they failed so many other times in life. They feel like this is another failure just waiting to happen.
Right. And so they keep holding themselves back and actually creating the very failure that they're afraid of having.
Yes.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And
yes.
So your job is to kind of be that stick that gets in the bicycle wheel and says, whoa, stop.
Yeah. Let's break that cycle. Let's find out what's happening. So keep repeating this over and over.
Oh, yeah. That's so powerful. And so what about procrastination? Like, I'm wondering if some of the people, because I think that somebody probably who would work with you just by seeing your personality would go, okay, well, he's going to be on top of this. Like, you're not lazy, so I better like step into my game, right? And then I wonder about people who procrastinate, like that fear of pulling the trigger, or they say one thing and then they don't deliver, or they don't do it. Like, yeah. And then nothing happens. How do you help somebody through procrastination, or when you notice that they're doing that? Words are one way, but the behavior is holding back.
Yeah. I would definitely have to share what I learned listening to folks like Jim Rohn, speakers that I've heard in the past. And one thing that like I've always believed and agreed with was when we procrastinate on certain things, it's because we don't value the process of getting it done. And a great example, for myself is if my wife, she like one thing that really gets on her nerves is getting the laundry done. And sometimes during the week, it doesn't bother me, and if she asks me to do it, I'll procrastinate. I'll prioritize everything else in the world except for getting laundry done. And last minute, next thing you know, we're spending our entire weekend doing laundry. And when I learned that when your value system is aligned with the goal, then you get the result that you're looking for. So the things that I value, it's not doing the laundry, it's not the process, but I value my wife being happy. I value peace in the home, no stress, clean house. So what I had to do was I had to align my values with the goal of getting the laundry done. So I get that end result. What I was doing was I misplaced my values. I was like, well, I value these other things, this business transaction, the next big sale, or helping a client that's crying on the phone. I value that over laundry because the laundry is insignificant comparatively speaking. So that's kind of where I bridged getting the result done was I had to change my values. I had to look at it from a different angle. Like it wasn't necessarily her telling me what to do and me doing it so she's happy. It was more of me doing it to keep my home clean, wife happy, keep the system in the ecosystem of our house, joyful versus, stressful. So after that, now it's like no problem. I found a system that works with my schedule. I fit it in my day. Is a non-negotiable rule for me, because my ultimate goal in life, when everything else is said and done, is a happy wife.
Mm-hmm. Right. And when you have a happy wife and you have happy children, and like you said, the ecosystem of the home is flowing, then everything else is an outpicturing from there.
Yeah. Everything else comes in place. Yeah.
Right. It all goes together. It's not, people think it's business over here and home over here and this over here. Like, no, it's all one. It's just different facets of the same thing. And so how are you going to have that system working in your favor?
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's really cool. I know I always say that my laundry will wait for me.
Yeah. I agree.
Like it'll wait. And then if I say that more than twice, then I'm like, okay, just do the laundry.
Yes.
I put it in my calendar. Once it's in my calendar, it's done.
Yeah.
I've disciplined myself like that. I set my week up on Sunday night and that's just what I do. I don't question it. And that way, then my overexcitable thinking brain can't outthink whatever it is I really want to do and come up with other distractions.
Because it's in the calendar. Yeah.
Right. Because it's in the calendar. So if it's in the calendar, it has to happen. I've got myself, and so that's like really fun I'm the one who set up the calendar. But, it's really, I think it's fun to find ways for our creative brains to successfully manage things that otherwise could seem to be mundane or not as important. Because if you have a crying client or laundry, well, the client would come first because laundry will wait. But then if you look at the values that go with both of those things, then it might change some of how it happens. Wouldn't mean one has to go second or whatever, but how do we do that?
Yeah.
I think that's really, really cool. So tell me a little bit. I have all these great questions for you. They're just popping in.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your view of personal transformation. Because you've helped a lot of people, like you've helped people lose weight, you've helped people get healthier, you help people in the business world, you've done all these different things. And you yourself have done a lot of work to transform. And so when you think about transformation, what does that mean to you? Like what's it rooted in?
So to me, like transformation, and I like to explain to people, like when we break the word apart, when we think of trans, I think of transportation. Like what's the destination that we're going to, and then the formation, like really kind of forming your beliefs and your life and your environment. Everything has to align with the destination you're trying to go to, and then we start to see change start to occur. So if you find yourself going in the wrong direction, the trajectory of your life is just really not what you envision it to be, then you need to change where you're being transported. You got to change the lanes. And that's kind of how I approach things. Like when recently, I'm making the transformation personally from being a coach of over 20 years in the field of nutrition and fitness and exercise and all these great things. And now I needed a new challenge. I felt like my growth kind of was halting. I wasn't as excited waking up in the mornings as I used to be. And, just a lot of self-auditing and evaluation, I realized I need something new. I need a new challenge. And so I stepped into a new world of my business life and my faith, to where it's not familiar. I'm a little uncomfortable, and I'm thriving off of that. I'm excited about Monday. I'm excited about every day of the week. I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. I get to see how much progress I can make, so it's not about becoming an overnight success. It's just about making that daily progress. And I feel like I'm transforming. I'm thinking differently. I'm experiencing different things. And I changed my environment. I couldn't keep having the same conversations in the same room with the same people and expect growth to come out of it. I had to create change for change to occur.
Right. Exactly. We have to be willing to go, I think, into that uncomfortable spot, because in that newness of that uncomfortable spot is where all the seeds of whatever cool thing is going to happen.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where the road is. Definitely. So I really find it interesting that you said, like, you got to this peak in your nutrition career. And it's like, okay, I'm not as excited anymore. I can do this you probably could do it sleeping. And so, okay, now I want to find another thing. And so your heart's desire started saying, well, there's more, there's more, there's more. In fact, I almost called the show, but wait, there's more.
Yeah. Yes.
And yes. So did that take a lot of faith for you to say yes to that inner calling and not just stay on that, comfort road, or what happened with that? Because most people wouldn't take that kind of risk. That's really, really admirable. How did that happen?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Again, just giving credit to my wife. She always does, like, we call it a buddy check. She's like, are you happy? You still happy? So she always does those things. And of course, autopilot, yes, of course I'm happy. And it was a very difficult choice to leave a profitable business. There was really no stress in my life. But again, just speaking of like physical transformation, without resistance, you're not going to see the change that you want. And I felt like it was just too easy. It was just becoming routine. And I just wasn't challenged in a very long time. And I came to a point where I was like, I know this feeling. I recognize this feeling. It was the same feeling when I left active duty military 15 years. And everyone said, don't do it, don't do it. And I took the plunge, and it was the best decision ever. And then I got to that point again, and I realized, like, I need more. I need to be challenged to continue to grow as a father, a husband, an entrepreneur, a man of faith, all these things I needed change. I needed that resistance. And closing down a successful, profitable business to step into a new world, new realm and everything, it was scary, but it was exciting at the same time. I was ready for the challenge. And I know my personality. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be successful, because it means something to me. It speaks volumes to my children, just seeing what I'm doing through my actions. So, but a lot of faith. I had to believe in it before I saw it. I really did. I just had to envision it. And I saw it so clearly of what the outcome is going to be. I knew it was the right choice for me. I knew I had to do it.
Right. And faith is that the fuel.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I was about to ask you about your children. How old are all of your children?
So I have a 17-year-old. I have a 16-year-old. I have a 13-year-old, and I have a 3-year-old.
Nice. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yes.
And so
nice.
when you look at your beautiful children and you think about the future, what do you see?
I see myself leaving a legacy for my children to inherit something that I could have ever imagined. And that's one thing I told my wife, like I'm living for them. And everything that I do, I'm doing it to where they can actually, benefit from it. And it can be passed on for generations. I couldn't even tell you what they want to do with their lives. I just want to have a solid foundation to where they understand things that's going to help them be successful in whatever decisions that they make. And I've learned a lot from my parents. They worked hard. They were blue collar workers. They worked hard and they did the best that they could with the information that was passed on to them. And my goal is to leave something even greater for my children and teach them their responsibility when I'm gone is to do the same thing. We have to continuously leave something greater behind than what we received, that we inherited. So that's my vision right now for my children, is just to learn, grow, and pass on.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So do they love that you have an entrepreneur lifestyle, or do they not even notice a difference?
They like when they go on vacations. Yeah. My daughters are teenagers now, so they're a little more aware. We have fun with it, especially when they see I do a lot of stuff on social media. And when they come across something that I do, they're like, God, Dad, you're such a dork, but every once in a while, because I try not to push it too hard on them. I try to do more showing them, through my actions and telling them you need to be like me. And then when I see one of my daughters, she started doing her little TikToks and she's selling these little jewelries that she makes. And I was like, that's entrepreneurship right there. Yeah, she's just she's just finding things to do. And my other daughter, she loves art. And the other day she's having a conversation with me. Do you think people would want to buy this? And I'm like, there you go. You're thinking something you love to do. You want to share it with the world and possibly make a living on it. I'm like, I'm fine with that. I love it. So it's just awesome seeing how we rub off on our children through our actions.
Right. Well, and they watch you, our children watch the adults, they watch the big people and they copy them. And they learn how you deal with adversity and how you deal with success and how you deal with different things. And then they copy that. And so they're learning that it's okay to create something your own and then turn it into something, which I think is a really valuable life lesson. It gives them freedom to be their own person and their own soul coming forth rather than fitting them into a box.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that. That's so exciting.
Yes. Yes.
That's really cool. So is there anything you wanted to talk about I haven't asked you about?
A couple of things, when it comes to just transformation, or when we're talking about the subject of transformation, I do believe sometimes what we experience in life, whether it's good or bad, I think life is made by design. And I think that the story we put behind the things that occur to us is what shapes us. Mm-hmm. I've been through some very, very stressful situations that today I'm so grateful for. And that's how I live my life. Anytime I'm going through something that feels like I'm going through a valley in life, I look at it as, okay, what's the lesson I'm supposed to be learning right now? It doesn't mean that I'm all joyful and jumping around hey, it's bad times. This is great. But I don't let that anxiety creep up on me. I calm myself. I approach it calmly, and it tells me, okay, it's time for me to step up. Obviously, there's a lesson that's here to be learned. There's something I need to elevate to the next level. I need to sit back and pay attention to what's going on here. That goes from me from having a background of my first marriage, I failed. And I promised myself as a child, I would never go through a divorce because I went through that as a kid and I never want to go through it. And I felt like a failure when I went through a divorce. My first home was repossessed after that. And then my car was repossessed. My bank account was negative. My family was split. I was a mess. My health, everything was a mess. And I started really just questioning my faith in everything. And then when I was finally still and really just took a step back and realized I didn't even know who I was, that's when I realized I need to pay attention. I need to pay attention. It's time for change. And I stopped beating myself up. I did enough of that. There was you couldn't go any lower than where I was at, and I really said, well, there's nowhere to go but up from here. And so I always recall that anytime I feel sorry for myself or a little bit bad, I always recall how I felt that one particular day. And I tell myself, never again. I'll never add to the beatdown that life gives you sometimes. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to pay attention and be disciplined to go ahead and get myself to the next level where I need to be. For anyone who's watching, that's going through some tough times right now, and they just feel like the world is against them, just understand it's really whatever story you attach to whatever you're going through, that right there is going to be what affects you the most. It's not the event. It's the story that you're coming up with. That's why things are happening to you. And always go for a higher road. Always just tell yourself, there's something to be learned here and I'm ready for it. I'm ready for whatever challenge. And we have a slogan in my group. We say we're unstoppable. What does unstoppable mean? It means no matter what, nothing, no matter what storm comes our way, we're going to keep going through it.
Right. Keep on walking. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm so refreshing for me to hear you say this about it's the story that attaches to that we attach to things, that's where the power is for whatever the outcome is. And I say that a lot, and people look at me sometimes like I've lost my mind, and I'm like, no, really serious. It's a story you say about that, whatever that is, and I can look back. I remember going through a really hard time with a business partner, and I was driving along and I was like really upset, and I'm like, all right, God, okay. That somehow this is going to get used for the good. I don't know how, but somehow all this is going to be used to help somebody somewhere, somehow. And like within 48 hours, I got a phone call from somebody with almost exactly the same thing that I needed to teach them that I just learned. Like It couldn't have been any more like exact than if I would have scripted it. And I'm like, okay, everything, and especially the hard things, I think, offer us that grist for something greater if we will say yes to that something greater.
Yes.
And sometimes people chicken out, but I don't think that's in our character. I don't think so. So I have a couple kind of random questions for you.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Because you've traveled a lot in the Air Force and in your life. And I am always curious about what is the most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Ooh, the most memorable food.
Yeah.
That is a really good question right there. Because I lived in Asia for a very long time. And they have very interesting food. Sometimes the food is still moving on your plate. Wow. If I've eaten a lot, I would say one of the most interesting things that I've eaten was a dish called balut. And it's actually a Filipino dish. But they do eat it in different parts of Asia as well. But balut is basically, it's an egg. It's a duck egg, and it's not fully hatched. So but for them, it's a normal food. And I remember seeing it on Fear Factor, and a food that's very common in the Philippines. It was on the show, The Fear Factor, and you eat it. And it's not the best smelling food either. So it was very interesting eating something like that. For sure. That's something I would never go on a menu, but like, yes, I'm going to eat that. But it was an experience. Like I had a lot of people from the country that wanted me to try it. As much as I was saying no, they were like being generous. To them, it was great food. So I went ahead and gave it a try. And I can't say it was great, but it was interesting.
Interesting. It was memorable.
Yes. I don't think your audience wants to hear too much detail of what everything looked like, but let's just say it was a one-time experience for sure.
Okay, there we go. Yes. I ask that question regularly of people who have traveled a lot, especially, and I get all kinds of answers. And you're the first one to answer this question that way. So there you go. See, there's always something amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. And I only have one more question for us before we end, because I'm really paying attention to honoring your time and your willingness to so generously share with me. I could talk to you forever. This is such a but the last question is, if we were going to put a billboard up that the entire world was going to see with Joe Green's quote on it, from you to the world, what would you say on that billboard?
Believe. That would be it. When my wife wrote me a little note on a sticky pad when we hired that coach I mentioned earlier, my first coach, $20,000, and I was distraught. I was pacing, didn't want to do it. She slid me a little note and it just said, "I believe in you." I still got the note to this day. And it was so powerful that she believed in me more than I believed in me. And she saw something in me that I was missing. And that changed my life forever. And that helped me not quit. There's so many times I wanted to quit. So many times I just want to close the business and just say, forget it, I'm done. But I was like, that very specific day, she believed in me. And then it helped me believe in myself. And now I never doubt myself. It really isn't. And I think that if we have more believers out there, more people who believe in themselves and if they feel like they want more and they can do more, you have to have that belief factor. You really have to believe that it can happen without asking for anyone else's, opinion about it. It starts with you. You have to believe in yourself before you can expect anyone else to.
Yeah, it's that inner belief, like you said earlier, where you knew that it was time to change, and what the new business is, where it's taking you, because you could see it with your belief. And so then we have the belief, and so we behaviorally can get to it, because it's kind of like that beacon in the night.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the belief is required. That's a really good one, believe. So would it be believe ... or believe ! Or believe period, or just believe no punctuation?
I would probably put believe period.
All right, good.
Just checking. Yeah.
I love it.
And let their mind work. Yep.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. I can talk to you forever about all this fun stuff. It's amazing. And you're so inspiring. I have goosebumps. It's just so great. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Remember, everybody, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a purpose. So go out there and let your beautiful light shine. And as Joe says, believe in it. Until the next episode, be well.
Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episode's, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.